Welcome to Prairie Conservation Action Plan's Prairie's Got the Goods Week webinar. My name is Caitlin Rose, and I am the Stewardship Coordinator with Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan, or PCAP. Check out other events going on for Prairie's Got the Goods Week. Today at 3 p.m., Dr. Karen Thompson with the University of Alberta will be talking about the impacts of industrial disturbance on soil microbial and plant communities in mixed grass prairies of Alberta. Don't miss Jerry Grant's Canadian Beef, a Producer's Perspective webinar tomorrow at noon. Ducks Unlimited Canada is doing a presentation on Thursday at 3 p.m. called Wetlands Got the Goods by Chuck Deschamps. Check out the PCAP website for more information on these events. I would like to take a moment to note that in-kind support for this project has been given by the Water Security Agency and Prairie Habitat Joint Venture. This project was undertaken with the financial support of the Government of Canada and the Federal Department of Environment and Climate Change Canada. Now a bit about our presenter. Corie White is a senior avian ecologist with the Saskatchewan Water Security Agency. Born and raised in Regina, Saskatchewan, Corie has always had a keen interest in wildlife and issues related to species at risk. Corie obtained a bachelor's degree in biology from the University of Regina, followed by a master's degree with a research focus on piping plovers. Corie has been working with species at risk for over 17 years, beginning her career with Nature Saskatchewan's Operation Burrowing Owl and the Saskatchewan Burrowing Owl Interpretive Centre. Since then, Corie has been leading piping plover programs and research for the past 14 years through the Water Security Agency. Aside from her work with piping plovers, Corie also coordinates the North American Waterfowl Management Plan for Saskatchewan and has been involved in numerous conservation programs ranging from greater sage-grouse conservation to lake sturgeon research. Before we begin, I would like to mention that if you have any questions during the presentation, please type it into the question section on your webinar dashboard. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. And now I will turn it over to Corie.
Thank you. I'm hoping my screens come up there for everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone, or I'd like to thank the PCAP for the opportunity to participate in this series and share some information about the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture, and our activities in the province. I've been a part of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan for about 5 years and have been leading the province's implementation. I've also been involved in the Science Committee as well as the Policy Committee, so I'm hoping to provide a little bit of that information and provide some further information as to how waterfowl management relates to native prairie conservation activities. So just to provide you with a little bit of an outline as to what I'm going to talk about today, I'd like to go through a little bit of the information and history of the NAWMP, or the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, to provide some information as to what it is. I'll move on to a little bit of information about the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture, or the pHJV, as well as what NAWMP in Saskatchewan looks like. Then I'd like to draw some themes and some lines through what waterfowl need and how that relates to our waterfowl management and how that influences programs and planning for Saskatchewan. From there, I want to take a broader approach and let you know what the ripple effect of waterfowl conservation looks like and start to draw some direct connections to native prairie conservation. Lastly, I'll provide you a little bit of a summary of our high points. So, what is NAWMP? It's kind of a funny word. NAWMP is the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. It's an international partnership to conserve abundant and resilient waterfowl populations and sustainable landscapes through management decisions based on strong biological foundations. The plan engages a community of users and supporters committed to conservation, valuing waterfowl. So oftentimes great successes are motivated by what are perceived as crises. In the early 30s, initial declines of waterfowl were observed, and by the 1980s, drought combined with poor nesting cover resulted in a declining duck population. The response in 1986 was the establishment of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. The partners have since then worked to conserve, restore wetlands and associated uplands and other key habitats for waterfowl across Canada, the United States, and Mexico. In the early years, just after it was established in 1986, the United States and Canada signed an international agreement. Mexico joined a few years later in 1994. Currently, we're celebrating 30 years of conservation, and the North American Waterfowl Management Plan is perceived to be one of the most successful conservation initiatives in North America. So how do we get to that? How do we continue to move forward through 30 years? Well, in order to achieve our vision, the management plan sets forth 3 overarching goals for waterfowl conservation. They include goals for populations, habitat, and people. Waterfowl populations should be seen as resilient and resilient to environmental disturbances, and they should be able to support other uses such as hunting and recreational. Habitat management focuses on the resources needed by waterfowl, explicitly recognizing the societal values related to environmental benefits associated with these waterfowl habitats. And I'll talk a little bit further about that, but that's really also related to the other ecological goods and services provided. These 2 goals deal with the population and habitat, and they've always been foundational to the NAWM. The 3rd goal, which is people, is the newest goal, and it explicitly addresses the needs and desires and involvement of people and underscores the importance of people to the success of waterfowl conservation. The plan recommends a dedicated effort to quantifying and communicating with the public on numerous environmental benefits associated with waterfowl conservation. And these, again, include other ecological goods and services such as flood attenuation, enhanced water quality, groundwater recharge, and other sorts of goods and services. So generally speaking, we have these 3 overarching goals that are the focus of our continental efforts. So how do we take those continental efforts and start to tailor the needs for each of the jurisdictions, provinces, or other types of habitat and waterfowl needs? Well, joint ventures were set up to provide the regional direction and partnerships to implement the NAWMP. They represent a partnership that focuses on an area or specific species that's identified by the North American Plan. Each joint venture includes a range of partners, including federal, provincial, or local governments, as well as other conservation organizations, so NGOs and other types of organizations that are important and essential to implementing. Each of the joint ventures then implements a strategic plan that has been developed and tailored to the species or the habitat needs. In Canada, we have 4 habitat joint ventures and 3 species-specific joint ventures. So for the most part, I'm going to talk about a habitat joint venture, and I'm going to start to focus in on what we call the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture, which is this area throughout the middle here. The Canadian Prairie pothole region has long been acknowledged as one of the most important breeding areas for continental waterfowl populations, and also for providing important habitat for a wide range of shorebirds, waterbirds, and other land bird species. About half of the North American mid-continent ducks breed within this region, and it contains some of the best waterfowl habitats in North America. So it's been long recognized as a critical and essential area for waterfowl productivity in North America. So the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture is a founding JV, or a founding joint venture. It was established in 1986 when the NAWMP was established. The area it covers is close to 160 million acres, and this includes both the boreal and the prairie parkland of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, Yukon, and parts of BC. So it's fairly large and encompassing. It also includes 2 unique geographic areas. So it includes the Prairie Parkland region as well as the boreal region. For most of the talk that I'm going to move forward with today, I'm going to really focus on the Prairie Parkland region. It's the part I know the most, but it also includes, there's 2 different, I guess, approaches in terms of our programming. The boreal has a different land management types, and different programs are suited for there. So I'm going to focus on the Prairie Parkland for the rest of the talk here. The Prairie Parkland region is primarily made up of private landowners and agricultural production. So this area is really a working landscape, and we need to carry that forward as we think about what programs will be the most effective on the ground. So the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture Prairie Parkland Implementation Plan, which was completed a couple of years ago, has set out its own vision and goals that align with the NAWMP vision and goals. But it allows for the tailoring of the programs or the development of a specific suite of programs to be implemented in the Prairie region. And this takes into the account that the Prairie Parkland region is a working landscape, and we need to ensure that our programs are going to be the most effective for that type of landscape. Our vision is healthy prairie, parkland, and boreal landscapes to support sustainable bird populations to provide ecological and economic benefits to society. This vision recognizes the value of prairie landscapes not only for waterfowl conservation, but also for other species and other benefits. Some of these consider ecological goods and services, and I'll continue on that theme as we start to talk about the ripple effects. We've also set out 3 goals that align with the NAWMP goals. Our population goals are a little bit more specific. Really, we want to maintain average levels of the population, so the average that we've seen since 1955 to 2014. Our habitat goal is that we want to maintain a carrying capacity to support this average level. So we need to ensure that we have appropriate habitat on the landscape. And lastly, for people, we need to have programs and policies that are delivered that favor both conservation as well as longer-term sustainability of rural communities. So again, working within, I guess, implementing programs within a working landscape. The pHJV is a working landscape, so we must ensure that the programs that we offer meet these goals and are relevant to agricultural producers, so both grain and cattle producers, as well as ensuring that they're relevant to vibrant rural communities. We also need to ensure that we offer a suite of options that are flexible and diverse. These may include a combination of incentive tools, extension tools, or even innovative crop choices that benefit waterfowl. But being relevant and flexible in providing these options are all key to the success of the program. Additionally, each province or jurisdiction needs to tailor the suite of tools to ensure that they're meeting their local needs and priorities. So the pHJV, just to give you a little bit of an idea of the structure here. So the pHJV partnership is an overarching partnership that includes multiple committees. So the pHJV has an advisory board. Then we have a number of working committees around policy, around science, around shorebirds, landbirds, and waterbirds. From there, we also have a set of provincial committees. The provincial committees are the committees that have local government as well as local NGOs or other organizations involved so that we can tailor the suite of tools that are best for the province. And that group then coordinates with their provincial partners to deliver and report on our program activities. So the Saskatchewan Committee. The Saskatchewan Committee is composed of provincial ministries and agencies. It includes the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, Water Security Agency, as well as other NGOs. so Nature Conservancy of Canada, Ducks Unlimited Canada, Bird Studies Canada, and as well as Environment Canada. So we've got a broad range of groups. This group collaborates to develop what I'm calling a made in Saskatchewan approach to conservation of waterfowl for here. The program or the implementation plan that we put together is designed to reflect our provincial priorities while still meeting the overarching goals of the pHJV and the NAWM. So how do we do that? How do we make a made in Saskatchewan approach? I'm going to take us up a little bit of a level here. Before I dive into those details, I want to talk a little bit about what do ducks need? What do waterfowl need? Because that really forms the foundation of how we start to develop our programs for the province. So this provides a critical piece of understanding how we develop that suite of programs, but we also need to make sure that it's aligning with our pHJV goals. So what do waterfowl need? Well, more specifically, what do waterfowl need to reproduce and contribute to the population? Well, since our inception, the pHJV has had a strong focus on developing our programs on a strong foundation of science. This has resulted in many years of field research in addition to the development of modeling exercises. Currently, we have a strong foundation of biological science to support what we do, and this information has provided basically the foundation of what we do. So we know that from 7 primary dabbling duck species, so mallard, scaup, blue-winged teal, gadwall, northern shoveler, pintail, redhead, canvasback, that these duck species need a matrix of grasslands and wetlands to reproduce and contribute to the population successfully. So we use this information to start to build our decision support tools. Once we understand that they need grasslands and wetlands, we can start to estimate where they are. So we can estimate the distribution of individuals across the landscape based on these habitats. Ducks Unlimited has produced some distribution or thunderstorm maps that illustrate the distribution of pairs per square kilometer across the prairie parkland range. This allows us or helps us to understand where we can target or direct our conservation efforts to best serve our waterfowl management objectives. So we can use these thunderstorm maps to start to delineate the areas where we want to work. The other important piece to this is understanding what's influencing the population. We need to understand the link from productivity to the actual birds that we see, so the actual adults, and we need to understand what the threats or limiting factors on the landscape are. Our understanding of these limiting factors is also based on a foundation of research and science, and it allows us to start to understand the primary drivers. We know from this work that for the species that I talked about, reproductive success is affected by upland change. This is considered one of the primary population limiting factors. Specifically, conversion of perennial cover to cropland restricts the available nesting cover and increases nest predation rates. In addition to this, we know that wetland loss and degraded wetland conditions is a continued threat as well. This ongoing loss of wetlands reduces the carrying capacity of the prairie parkland region as well, and it reduces the ability to attract and hold breeding pairs. So really, we know that they need grasslands and wetlands, and we know that there's a number of drivers on the landscape that are leading to a change in the uplands as well as the loss of wetlands. And these are the 2 primary driving factors. In addition to this, we know that the threats associated with the landscape changes are not uniform, and the full effect of the impact on waterfowl depends on the concurrent changes of wetland and uplands. And as you can see here, these are just a few maps that have been developed for our planning purposes. This is a map that Environment Canada produced. It's a drainage intensity map. Basically what it does is on a higher level, broad scale, it starts to identify areas where we've had intense wetland loss and higher percentage of drainage activities. So that's the green map here on the left. The one on the right, also produced by Environment Canada in conjunction with Ducks Unlimited, starts to show some of the predicted 10-year loss rates. And you can see again that both of these used together illustrate that the change across the landscape isn't uniform and that targeting programs may be more effective. So now that we know what the waterfowl need, we have an understanding of the threats and some of the limiting factors. We can start to take some of this information into our programs and planning. So the science provides the key kind of foundational information to further develop and implement our program suite, our delivery mechanism, and provide some strong rationale and foundation for these efforts. But how do we combine our vision of healthy landscapes, the 3 goals, and the science? We have these large overarching ideas, we have some detailed science, and somehow we need to combine these to come up with effective mechanisms on the ground. So understanding the spatial distribution and potential impacts allows us to determine what we need to do or the programs that would be most appropriate. This needs to be combined with an understanding of the landscape, being a working landscape, and the need for local landowners and communities to see the programs as relevant and beneficial to their land management goals. So we need to know waterfowl need intact wetlands, intact uplands, and therefore our programs need to have those as well. What I have here is really just a diagram of some of the modeling process that we go to, just to illustrate that we have a number of inputs that go into how we model and how we decide on what is the appropriate suite of tools to use. So in Saskatchewan, we also determined that having a broad suite of tools would be the most beneficial. As such, we in the other provinces include things like restoration, retention activities, and crop options, as well as policies in our program tools. So we want to make sure that we have a broad suite that provides us with that adaptability and flexibility. The restoration and retention programs have various delivery mechanisms as well, ranging from extension or promotion activities to short-term management agreements to longer-term agreements, and lastly, acquisition or conservation easements. This ensures that we have a diversity of programs that can be tailored to meet the needs of the parties or to meet some land management objectives. Using these programs, then, we can actually start to model different scenarios of what changes on the landscape may occur as a result of our programming, and determine what the quote-unquote waterfowl outcome is achieved. Then we can combine this information with what we know from our past performance. So it's really great to do a lot of modeling, but oftentimes that needs to be put against a backstop of what you can actually do on the ground, what we've achieved in the past, and what we know is actually appropriate moving into the next planning horizon. So what does this mean for Saskatchewan? In Saskatchewan, we've taken that thunderstorm map and we've developed 21 target landscapes to deliver programs in. So we've taken those areas of red and yellow and we've said, okay, we're going to focus our activities on the areas of highest density for waterfowl, and that's where we get the most bang for our buck, basically. And you can see that we have target landscapes throughout Saskatchewan. They're based on the density, so 30 pairs per square mile for the suite of dabbling duck species. Pintails, on the other hand, are a special species that have seen more decline than the other species, and therefore we have a lower threshold. 6 pairs per square mile is what we base our pintails on. And there's a couple target landscapes that have been specifically targeted to pintails. One of them is in the southwest here, Boundary Plateau. So from there, we know where we're targeting our programs. We know the suite of programs that we have. The next step is to actually set some quantifiable objectives for the program. However, as I mentioned, we take into account some of our past performance or past accomplishments. So socioeconomic challenges were identified during the previous program delivery period, and program adjustments were anticipated to help us with increasing future program participation. Oftentimes this past performance does highlight challenges, and we need to really understand how people value and manage and think about the landscape so that we can understand what's achievable in Saskatchewan. And understanding how people value the landscape means that we also have to understand all of the other ripple effects, so all of the other associated services and functions that grassland and wetland habitats provide. So we reviewed our past performances of the program delivery and determined that a continuation of the programs at its current pace would be okay to maintain our productivity levels to meet our population targets. And I'll just quickly go through here what we've set up in terms of acres and program accomplishments. So winter wheat is one of our innovative crop options. It was very successful in our last planning period, which ended a couple years ago. So for our next planning period, which we're currently in, it was set at 15% of all wheat acres would be in winter wheat varieties. And our past performances really seem to be attributed to the development of new strains that were disease resistant and cold resistant. Restoration activities incrementally increase the carrying capacity of the landscape and contribute to increased productivity. Restoration of upland areas in tame pasture or hayland, we're looking at, almost 500,000 acres of restoration for our planning period that we're in right now. Previously, these programs have been relatively successful, and we think that it's because they've been relatively successful, and we think that we should be able to continue those on a good pace. Wetland restoration, however, was a little bit more difficult to deliver, but we think that as we move forward, if we offer programs that have higher incentives and shorter term length agreements, that we should be able to get some uptake. Lastly, retention activities really prevent or slow the decline of waterfowl productivity and are really essential to preventing further loss. So having grass on the ground and keeping it there is like having an insurance policy in a way. The retention activities have been relatively successful in the province as well, and this is thought to reflect the variety of programs that we offer through our partners, ranging from short-term agreements to longer-term perpetual agreements. Again, the tailoring of this program to meet the land management objectives, I think, has been one of the benefits of having a range of options available. So we've set those objectives to go out to 2020. As soon as 2021 starts, we'll be moving into a new planning horizon. But the setting of these objectives have been really important for guiding us on the long term. Through the past 30 years, we've been setting objectives, revisiting them, revising them, and setting them again, really providing kind of a North Star for program delivery. But really, what has that meant for Saskatchewan? Well, it means programming dollars for these programs have entered the province. In the past 30 years, we've looked at approximately $600 million of money, conservation money, entering the province for waterfowl conservation. Over these 30 years, 1.8 million acres of habitat has been restored or retained during this time through direct programming. and another 2 million acres has been involved in stewardship or extension programs. So as you can see, we set these smaller values for a shorter term planning horizon, but as we incrementally move through this program, you can see that the numbers add up and have have an incremental change on the landscape. And that's what this figure really shows. So we know that we've brought money in and we've got acres on the ground that has been enhanced or influenced by the conservation plans or conservation activities, but what does this really mean? The landscape changes need to show a change for waterfowl since the number of ducks is the outcome that we're managing for. This figure shows the estimated number of hatch nests on the y-axis and the years on the x-axis. The dotted line is the average that we're managing for. Now you can see here that there's been some natural fluctuations occurring in the waterfowl populations through time. Oftentimes that's a result of favorable wet conditions. The suite of species that we look at often follow the trend in number of ponds, so that reflects the wet-dry cycle. However, you can see that the top line, the green line on the top here, which is the with pHJV, illustrates that there's been an incremental increase in the number of waterfowl nests compared to what would have been without habitat or conservation programming. So this is all great information. We have science that helps inform our planning. We set objectives that are quantifiable, and that's really provided our North Star as we've moved through the past 30 years. We're bringing conservation dollars into the province, but there's a ripple effect, and our programming for waterfowl may be more than meets the eye. As such, I'm going to go through some of the additional benefits and overlaps with our waterfowl management programs. So I'm just going to talk a little bit here about what the ripple effect is for waterfowl conservation, some of the additional benefits, the values and opportunities in terms of synergies and alignments, particularly with native prairie, and that all of this needs an understanding of people and how they value the landscape and view the landscape. So I just want to bring us back full circle a little bit to the 3 NAWMP goals and reflect on those goals a little bit. So the goals, again, were around population, habitat, and people, or human dimension. So here's some of the basis for the ripple. Conceptually, these 3 goals of waterfowl management are subsets of larger benefits for society. For example, enhancing waterfowl populations also benefits a broad suite of other wildlife species. Retaining or restoring habitat provides other ecological goods and services, and habitat offers other benefits for outdoor enthusiasts, land manager, as well as rural communities. So economists term all of these other things as natural capital, stock of natural resources, or environmental and ecosystem resources that have value. Many, if not most, of the habitat projects conducted in the aim of waterfowl management also enhance the natural capital and have added benefit beyond on those just driving the conservation efforts. So what's the ripple effect here? I'm just going to go through kind of each one of the sides of the triangle and just highlight some of the additional benefits. So for waterfowl populations, we know that there's also added benefit to wetland-dependent species, grass and services aspects means that we need to further understand the effect that our programs have on things like mitigation of water quality, flooding impacts, particularly on agricultural practices, and it also means that we need to take into consideration the general public's concern about climate change, water quality, and flooding. These really provide some valuable context, which we might use to frame the pHJV, or actually I think it'll be very important in framing the pHJV programs and specific provincial initiatives as we move into the future. As such, this side of the triangle is really important to keep front of mind as we continue to work and create more depth and understanding of our programs as they relate to EG&S. Lastly, the bottom side of our triangle, or the foundation of it, is people, or the human dimension. Although people have always been an intrinsic part of the programming, it wasn't until 2012 that it was explicitly included as a goal within the plan. The human dimension allows us to understand the function or service of the ecosystem that it provides. The human perspective provides the frame in which we view a number of these things. It can be viewed as an investment into the vitality of our rural communities, and support and aid our land managers and landowners in reaching their land management goals. So in bringing all of these things together, waterfowl management is multifaceted. It has a wide ripple effect, including ecological goods and services and supporting our rural communities. It's thought that waterfowl conservation is linked to, the idea of enterprise and is really interconnected in that way. Our habitat programs sustain healthy waterfowl populations. Those programs can be strategically aligned with land management goals. It brings conservation dollars into the provinces. That in turn provides hunting or other recreation activities, which generates funds to further support our habitat program. So there's this cycle here of bringing habitat programs into play, but also the ripple effect. A key piece here of waterfowl conservation is native prairie and the general conservation of grasslands, so keeping grass on the ground. We know ducks need grass. Without that, there are some impacts to productivity and the population. So I just wanted to bring this presentation to this and highlight the overlap and the value that this conservation program places on native prairie. So native prairie absolutely has value. Healthy uplands are an important piece of waterfowl conservation, and the pHJV and the provincial programs have included this as a pivotal and critical part of our vision, our goals, and our suite of programs. So again, just as I said, waterfowl need grasslands. This is what they need to reproduce successfully, produce chicks, and basically recruit individuals into the population. We know, though, that one of the primary limiting factors to productivity is the change in uplands. And grasslands have declined over the past number of decades. Estimates suggest that grasslands have declined by 10% within the pHJV from 1985 to 2001 and have continued to decline at a similar rate since 2001. Despite some gains in permanent cover since 1986, or when the NAWMP started, related to strengthening cattle market, need for tame and native forage, the pressures on the native grasslands have increased. And this is really critically important to ducks, but it's also important to other grassland species and has impacts on the overall goods and services provided. So given the noted pressures and the decline of native prairie, its importance to waterfowl and other species, the pHJV has adopted an overarching goal of no net loss of uplands or wetlands. We recognize the value of keeping grass on the ground and have designed some of our stewardship programs and other mentioned programs around uplands. Overall, our objective is basically to retain 1 million acres of grasslands in the pHJV, with close to 400,000 acres of that occurring in Saskatchewan. We'd like to target those acres based on those that are at highest risk of loss. However, this is a piece of work that is still ongoing and needs to be completed in the future. So we've been able to tailor our targeting based on waterfowl populations, but we're looking at further tailoring our upland or native prairie programs to those areas that are at highest risk of loss. But again, that's an ongoing piece of work that we're hoping to have done in the near future. The role of landowners and managers, it has been pivotal to the pHJV success. The pHJV capacity to meet our habitat objectives in the past was really determined by the willingness of producers to participate in this program. We've also recognized that there is an influence from commodity prices and other agricultural processes or policies, but really it's the willingness of landowners to see the value in these programs and participate. So people in the programs don't exist in isolation. We must be able to be flexible and respond to the changing environment to ensure that we remain relevant. Our partnerships with ranchers have been successful and really essential to that, and we need to continue to focus on ranchers to build stronger relationships. So with all of this to consider, what are our next steps and how do we remain successful into the future? We've been successful so far, but that doesn't mean we're done. We've still got a lot of work ahead of us. What does the work look like? Well, honestly, I don't know yet. Management will need to be adaptive to the social and environmental changes that are occurring at an accelerated rate. Success of this program will mean that we need to be more adaptable, more efficient, and more relevant in the lives of the general public, who are becoming more and more concerned about clean water, flooding, and the health of the environment. So we need to consider that ripple effect and how people value our programming. We also need to continue to consider areas of overlap and synergies where they exist. For example, where our programs overlap with native prairie conservation and the focus on other functions of the ecosystem. So in summary, NAWMP is one of the largest and most successful conservation efforts in history. This program has been successful in Saskatchewan in bringing dollars in, but also in delivering the habitat programs. Since its inception in the 1980s, the backdrop has really shifted. But generally speaking, we have continued to adapt and have added depth to our programming. This includes increasing knowledge of our biology and the appropriate programs, as well as moving to a more holistic vision that includes people and acknowledging the broader ecological goods and services. Waterfowl conservation reaches beyond waterfowl and has a broad ripple effect to ecological goods and services and supporting our rural communities. And it is closely aligned with native prairie, and our ranching community has been a pivotal and an essential piece of our success. And it will need to continue to be a part of it if we're going to succeed into the future. Saskatchewan has continued to participate in the pHJV, and this will help to sustain conservation, hopefully moving into the future, and hopefully will lead to more innovative program solutions. Lastly, as we move into the future, we will continue to learn more about the social and economic aspects of conservation programming. The hope is that this will help us to align with people to increase the value of our programs. And with that, if people have questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you very much for the great presentation, Corie. I know I learned a lot. If any of our listeners today have any questions, they can type it into the question section of the webinar dashboard. There is one question here from a listener named Shauna, and she's just asking if a recording of this webinar will be made available, and the answer is yes. This webinar has been recorded, and it will be uploaded to the PCAP YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/user/skpcap, and that'll happen later today. So if anyone else has any other questions, you're welcome to type that into the question section of the webinar dashboard. Doesn't look like there's any questions at the moment, so I'd just like to show all of our listeners the PCAP website. So if you go to upcoming events and click on Ecological Goods and Services Week 2017, you'll get some information about what's going on this week. We also have our schedule for what will be going on. This afternoon we have a presentation at 3 p.m. About the impacts of industrial disturbance on soil and plant communities in southern Alberta. If you're interested in waterfowl, be sure to check out Ducks Unlimited Canada's presentation on Thursday at 3 p.m. and it's called Wetlands Got the Goods, and I know that'll be a great presentation. We've got lots going on throughout the week, so be sure to check out this website and sign up for the webinars. All the webinars are free. You just need to register ahead of time. It doesn't look like there are any questions at the moment, so I guess we'll call it a day. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Corie at the end of this presentation. You'll also get a short survey. If you don't mind taking a minute to fill out the questionnaire, we would really appreciate it. And again, check out the website for other events going on for Prairie's Got the Goods Week. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Corie.
Thank you.